Yeah, so we'll go for it. Hi, Sam, thanks so much for joining us today. So obviously I watched your stuff on social media, and I just felt it's funny how, sometimes I get the impression that this is one of those things that people just don't talk about at work, like what we should wear and how much it does link to our kind of personality. And so it's really interesting to see what you do and the kind of lines you take and the advice that you give. So I just wondered, there's a few people here just wanting to hear, what do you actually do? Can you tell us a little bit about that? And maybe just a little bit of really quick potted history on kind of how come you ended up doing this stuff. That would be great.
What do I do? I think my husband thinks that what I do is just mess about with clothes all day. Like, it's just a fun, frivolous hobby. I help people, mostly women. I have mostly female clients at the moment. I help them to save time and make money using the power of their wardrobes. And I was a newspaper editor, magazine editor. And whilst I had always loved clothes and dressing and style, I was told that that was a silly thing to do. So I kind of went into newspapers, became a manager at a young age. Humble brag, I realized the other day that I had 4 promotions in 5 years, but no one ever really taught me what I should be wearing. And I realized that I needed to have a strong personal brand because I was going to have to go into rooms with people who didn't necessarily think that I was in charge. When you walk into a room and someone thinks that you're the receptionist, or they automatically kind of think that you're the one that's going to be taking the notes and you're in charge, you're the leader. I realized that I needed to step into the space of being a leader through what I was wearing. And doing that, I managed to cultivate quite a strong personal brand. And then I was getting asked to do stuff like speaking or be kind of like an industry voice, as it were. And then I started to have other women in leadership asking me for my help with what they were wearing. And at this point, I didn't have any formal styling training. It was questions like, what should I wear to an interview? Or I've got this really important meeting tomorrow. Can you help me find an outfit? I love doing it. So I thought there is a huge gap here. I know there is, because this is something that I struggle with, and it's something that these women are struggling with, and no one's having this conversation. If you look in most handbooks, it's kind of says dress, smart. What does that even mean? What does that mean, especially now after the pandemic? Because the whole kind of landscape has changed. First of all, we were working in the office every day, then we went to working at home. Now we're doing this weird hybrid thing, and we just aren't quite sure what we should be wearing.
Yeah, and it is so interesting. I mean, I remember when I was a lot younger, and like similar to you, I was in a quite a male sort of dominated environment. And I remember having this thing about I needed to be the tallest person in the room. So I would wear these ridiculous heels. And I was just thinking about it the other day, thinking, why did I feel like that? Like, how did that? So what is the link between like our how, just as you know what I'm saying, like our minds, how we feel, and how that sort of how does the clothing kind of play into that?
What you said there about being the tallest is so interesting, because there's a lot of stuff in our workwear that we don't realize goes back to the time of John T. Malloy, who was this kind of man who wrote the workwear Bible, essentially. And because women were just getting into workspaces that were typically male dominated, he said that what you should do as a woman is like emulate a man in terms of, the shoulders, hence why we end up loads of shoulder pads. And you should be, you should have femininity, because men like that, but not too feminine, because otherwise you're going to come across too sexy and they won't take you seriously. So it's really interesting when you read that book to look now and think we're still, 50 years later, we're still kind of hung up on that. But there's a massive link between what you wear and who you are. And it's something called enclothed cognition, which essentially means that you embody the identity of your clothes. So in various studies, they use a lab coat and they get two groups of people. They tell one group that what they're wearing is a lab coat, and the other half they tell them that they are wearing a painter's smock. And what they notice is that the group wearing what they think is the lab coat, and it doesn't matter who the group is, they've done this with prisoners, they've done it with students, they've done it in corporate settings. The people wearing the lab coat take on an air of confidence, and they are more productive and they are more honest. And then the group wearing what they think is a painter's smock, they find aren't as productive or as confident. So it's really interesting how we have this identity wrapped up in our clothing.
That is so interesting. And so you're saying that there's a link between your clothing and how you perform at work?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what do you think when you're sort of working with your clients, what is it that they're really struggling with then? And how do you come into that? What do you do that helps them?
So let's take an example of what is going on. Someone has to go into the office today because they have this important meeting, and they're kind of stuck in this weird work from home hybrid situation where their workwear wardrobe is still very much 2019 pre-pandemic. Mm-hmm. And they aren't sure what to wear, and no one's really being clear with them in terms of the communication. So they stand in front of their wardrobe thinking, what am I supposed to wear to this meeting? They're, discarded clothes all over the floor. They feel stressed. Then they start to take it out on themselves and tell themselves, it's my fault because I should have lost weight. I should have done this. I'm fat. I'm ugly. All these horrible things that we tell ourselves. Then we're running late. So then we're in the car. We're even more stressed. Get to the office, go into the meeting. And even when we're talking in the meeting, we're in the room, but we're not really in the room because we're in our heads telling ourselves they're staring at your stomach, or I know you shouldn't have worn this today. And you feel really uncomfortable in your clothes, and you can, you feel the waistband digging in, and you start to question yourself and your ability. So you aren't actually putting the best you forward. And so you're not going to get the best results from that meeting because your energy is everything. Like, they can tell that you don't feel good, even if they can't pinpoint that's what it is. And 55% of your credibility goes to the visual, so what people can see, which is annoying. Being in a world of visual creatures, that is annoying, but unfortunately that is human nature. And so it can actually really impact your performance at work. And the other reason that people come to me is because there are several scenarios of why, but another reason is that they feel that they can't go for a promotion. So they might want a promotion, but they don't feel confident enough to do it. And so they've invested loads into their skill set, their expertise, their qualifications, but still something isn't quite working. And what it is ultimately is the lack of self-belief. So when I'm working with people in their wardrobe, it is about the clothes, but it's not really about the clothes. It's more about how they feel about themselves. And then through that, what they believe that they are capable of achieving. And it is mostly with the people that I've worked with, that is quite a specific issue to women in the workplace. And I know that from when I was a manager and I was trying to hire for a deputy, and I had 4 women in mind who were all incredible. Not a single one of them applied for the job. And when I asked them why it was, they said stuff like, I'm not qualified enough, I don't have enough experience, I need another year or so. Meanwhile, men were applying for the job who weren't as qualified or experienced, and fair play to them, but ultimately just putting themselves forward, put themselves into the position of maybe having a chance of getting the job that the women were talking themselves out of. So it's helping people make money, essentially. That's what I say. It's not about the clothes. It's about saving time and making money.
And what are the biggest kind of takeaways that your clients, I mean, obviously I don't want to give away all your secrets, but it'd be great to give away maybe 1 or 2 techniques, because what I'm hearing is, we want to be comfortable, but we want to look great and we want to feel great. So what does that mean? Like, what should we do when we stood in front of that wardrobe in the morning? Are there a couple of techniques you can kind of share with us?
The first thing is, think about how often you actually go and sort out your wardrobe? Because for most people, the answer is never. I have a lot of clients, we do this step and they'll say, I've never done this before and I don't know why. And usually it's because creativity is seen as silly, it's seen as frivolous. You know, you're going to spend some time playing dress up in your wardrobe. Are you 5? But actually, in the long run, it's going to help you because number one, you're going to be able to know what's actually in your wardrobe. Most people don't know what's in their wardrobe. On average, we have 92 items of clothing. And I say on average, that's based on a study. From my own experience, that's way off. Like, people have way more stuff than that, but we can't see it. So we don't know it's there. So we don't wear it. And we have stuff in there that we've kind of justified to ourselves. One day I'll wear that again. One day I'll lose weight. And our wardrobe becomes this place of fear and shame and guilt rather than a place of empowerment. We're not going there to think, right, I'm going to have a really good day today. What can I wear that's going to reflect how I want to feel? It's more, oh, I have to find something to wear to this meeting and I don't know what to wear. What's going to make me feel kind of like I can just fade into the background? So think of 3 words of how you want to feel and how you want to come across. And then think about whether those words actually translate into your wardrobe or not. Because I'll have a lot of clients who will say words like confident, colorful, bold, and then we open the doors of their wardrobe and I say, okay, so is that reflected here? And the answer is always no, it's not. So have those 3 words in mind when you sort your wardrobe, and also when you get dressed in the morning, how do you want to feel? And it starts with what you put on first of all. Most of us dress for the outside, we dress for other people. And actually, by doing that in the pandemic and now working from home, what's happened is we don't feel very good every day. We spend our money on the stuff that we wear for a wedding, right? It's summer. I'm sure people have got weddings to go to. So we spend, you know, £500 on an outfit for this wedding. Then our everyday stuff, we're just putting on our old tracksuit bottoms. And then we wonder why we don't feel very good every day. And then we wonder why we aren't doing the scary actions in our business that would actually help us make money. So it starts with what you're wearing every day. It starts with how you want to feel and putting those 3 words into your wardrobe and having a good clear out session, first of all, and then taking some time every now and again to go into your wardrobe and find new outfits. And from that as well, you'll just gain more confidence in what to wear, because you'll start to naturally understand what suits you, what looks good, what colors you really like. All of that information is right there. And the reason that we end up buying stuff that we never wear is because we don't empower ourselves with that time and space to actually learn that information.
Wow. It's really interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. And the thing I like about you is that you are always saying it's not about going and buying a whole new wardrobe. It's about maybe just you wearing your stuff differently. And it's really interesting when I see pictures of you, you do put like quite what I might say all clashing stuff together. So what's that all about? Like, should we like, how do you decide like, oh, I'm going to wear that skirt with that top? Because you wouldn't maybe naturally put them together like you would. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just think about that a little bit. How do we actually put that outfit together?
Yeah. A lot of it comes with confidence. And, you know, some people do have a natural ability, if you will, to put colors together. Again, humble brag. But, you know, how do you want to feel? Color, there's a lot of psychology in color. So if you wear like shortwave colors, for example, red is going to make you feel really confident. There's actually a study that shows that sports teams that wear red are more likely to win. Which, you know, the psychology of color. If you want to feel calm and grounded, then you want to put on blue. Networking, orange is actually a really good color for networking, and pink is a really good color for just feeling like you love yourself, which, you know, we all could do with more, right? But with color, get the color wheel. It's really this simple. Get the color wheel and look at the colors that are opposite each other, the colors that are next to each other. And then if you draw a triangle, the 3 colors in that triangle will all go together. You don't have to clash your colors all the time like I do, but you can kind of incorporate more color. So if you were wearing, for example, you know, a blue top with just jeans, you could think, what could I wear with that? Well, I could wear an orange scarf with it, because it just adds a bit of extra, and it's a good talking point for people. I've been at a few meetings recently where people have said to me, oh, I remember you because the last time I saw you, you were wearing that lime green skirt, or you were wearing that thing or this thing. They may not even remember your name or, you know, what you do, but they will remember you. And from there, if you're the only other person in the room that they recognize, they're going to go and strike up a conversation with you. Your wardrobe is your best business card. That's what I always say.
That is
So
really interesting.
yeah, so that's how with sorry,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say with colour, just get the colour wheel, and sometimes it helps to just print it out and stick it in your wardrobe. And you can put your stuff in order of colour. Some people like to do that. I personally think that it's better to put your stuff in the order of the items, because then you can see where the gaps are. A lot of the problem is that we have standout pieces and then we don't have the basic stuff to go with them every day. That's where a lot of the problem is with wardrobes.
So what, you've got the great skirt that you want to wear, but you don't know what.
Yeah, you're like, what am I supposed to wear with this? Yeah, it's the basic, because we are so used to buying stuff for the gaze of other people. We have all of these, we spend all our money on, you know, all the perfect outfit for the Christmas party or for this wedding I have to go to or for this meeting, and then the everyday stuff we don't. And that's where the issue is a lot of the time.
So if we have got a serious meeting, so it might be, you know, a new client meeting, or it might be, like you say, an interview, or you know, something where you're going to be maybe having a review with your manager, or you're doing a review with an employee, what should we wear? So you've kind of said dress for yourself, for your mood, but I guess there is also a thing about the context, isn't there? How do those two kind of interrelate?
When you know your personal brand or your signature style, as it were, that becomes a bit easier. And for a lot of people who own businesses, where the issue is that they've kind of portrayed themselves as fun, or, you know, whatever, quirky or stand out, and then their wardrobe doesn't reflect that. But yeah, it's important to consider the context of the meeting that you're going into. Interestingly, and a lot of clients are very surprised by this, when I turn up and I do an in-person session with a client, I wear black. And the reason I wear black is because I'm not the focus of the session. So I use my clothes on social media or networking to attract people or to talk to people. But then when I'm working with them in their own setting, I'll wear black because it's not about me. You can never go wrong with black. You know, black looks really great on certain types of people with certain types of coloring, if you're looking at color analysis. But for a lot of people, black is their kind of their color, their power color, and sometimes just about adding a little accessory to jazz it up a little bit. So yeah, the context is important. And I actually feel that it has become quite unpopular to say that you should care about what you wear in a professional setting. I have had conversations with managers who've told me that they've had people turn up for interviews recently wearing like shorts and a fedora hat, which obviously is not the vibe of the office. But there is an issue for people who were in employment pre-pandemic, who are struggling with their old corporate wardrobe and what to wear now, and also Gen Z who've entered the workforce during the pandemic, because they've never been in a corporate setting before, so they don't actually know, no one's teaching them what to wear. So
and
yeah,
I want to come back to that Generation Z piece, so we will return back to that, but before we do that, you sort of said earlier, you know, people don't know, or the communication around what's appropriate isn't there. And, you know, so what is your view about having a dress code? Because obviously as an HR person, I have a view about this, but I'm really interested to know what is your view, and how, you know, how does that affect your clients, I suppose, as well?
it's it affects my clients because they are very confused. They are very confused about what to wear to work. So I had a client recently who'd moved from one company to another, exactly the same role, but she walked into this second company and she said to me immediately, I knew that I got it wrong, because they just weren't wearing what she was wearing in the other office, and it immediately kind of put her on the back foot. But when she looked through the dress code, they're pretty similar in the language they use. So I think it's really important to communicate, not just with the employees themselves, but also with the line managers, because it is really confusing for line managers of what they can and can't say to their employees. I had a manager say to me recently that people look like they're either going to Royal Ascot or they're in their pajamas. And when I said to them, why don't you feel comfortable having that conversation? They were like, are you kidding? I'm struggling with this. No one's ever spoken to me about what I should be wearing to work. So how am I supposed to have that conversation? I don't want to get myself into trouble by saying the wrong thing. But it's also really important to take into account different needs, because people who are neurodivergent need different things from their workwear. They can hyper focus, if labels are scratchy, if materials are scratchy, then that can become their focus, and then that's harder for them to concentrate then on the work that they have to do. So it's important to get employee buy-in, I think, so they feel invested in it. But also it's just important to actually make this part of the work conversation, because we don't, and then people may get, disciplinary. I've spoken to people that this have happened to, where they are they have autism or the ADHD, and they have misinterpreted, as it were, the workwear policy. So they think that they're wearing what the policy stipulates they should wear, and then they've been called into disciplinary action because it turns out that, they're not the right fit for this company based on what they're wearing.
So you're suggesting it's almost like part of maybe even induction's too late, like it's part of that really upfront piece around, what we wear, how we wear it. That is really interesting. And when you talk about sort of neurodiversity, I know you've done a bit of research on this. I mean, what are the considerations there, with regard to making allowances and adjustments and making sure that we're catering and being inclusive?
So materials is really important. There are instances, I know there is a company called Send It to Alex. They're really great. Lily and Alex who run that, and they deal with people who have had grievance procedures against them because of workwear policies, or kids who kind of get constantly like pulled up in front of the headmaster because their tie is the wrong length or whatever. But the problem is that when people are neurodivergent, like I said, they can hyper focus on stuff, or materials feel uncomfortable for them, or even the color of stuff can put them off focus. And I have clients who do have ADHD, and often we will work around what is going to make them feel good but means they can concentrate, because if they are wearing a really bright color, for example, they find it harder to concentrate on the task at hand. So I would definitely recommend getting some sort of expert help with that part of the policy.
And like you say, maybe designing it with the team themselves.
Yeah, because then they have more buy-in as well, and they don't feel like they're wearing someone else's idea of who they should be. A lot of women particularly will say stuff to me like, I'm just fed up of spending all my money on boring black shift dresses, and these suits from Reiss or whatever, and the problem is I'm still going to have the same issues at work. One of my clients said to me, I've been mansplained at for the last 20 years, and now I realize that actually if I'd have worn the green suit that I really wanted to wear, maybe I've had the confidence to call someone up on that, because it's still going to happen anyway. But because I didn't feel very confident, I just kind of sat back and almost allowed it to happen. Whereas if I felt more confident in myself through what I was wearing, I would have said, no, Derek, I actually know about, I'm an expert in this. So yeah,
it is really interesting. And what are the downsides though of kind of taking it into our own hands, as it were, and maybe, you know, maybe not having the right reactions from people? So I mean, one that really does spring to mind is all that criticism that detective leading the Nicola Bulley investigation got for wearing that shift dress in the briefing, the press briefing, and it was, you know, vitriolic, some of it, and she had obviously worn something that it was appropriate, she felt confident in it, you know, it wasn't a really huge, great big bright loud color or whatever. But what are the downsides, do you think, and how do we make sure that we're not holding back because of the potential for that kind of messaging?
It's confidence, right? I know a lot of women who have really nice stuff in their wardrobes, and when I say to them, why aren't you wearing that, they'll say, oh, because what will people think? And the thing to remember is that, so I'll talk about that situation in a second, but generally 99% of the time people aren't looking at you, which to me is quite offensive because I'm a narcissist. But they're not looking at you because all of the stuff you carry around in your head about, you know, how terrible you look and how awful you are, everyone is carrying around that same stuff about themselves. So even if they are looking at you, they're looking at you through the lens of their own self-perception. They're thinking, actually, even if they were thinking she looks ridiculous or I could never wear that, that's what they're thinking. They're thinking it's about me. And so that's what to remember. And the 1% of the time when they are thinking about you, usually what they're thinking is, that looks really good, and I wish I had the confidence to wear that, or because I've seen that person leading by example, tomorrow I'm going to wear the thing that I really wanted to wear today. So actually it creates a bit of a ripple effect. That's the way that I think of it anyway. So you're creating a bit of a ripple effect to give other people the confidence to be more of themselves. And ultimately at work, that's what you want to bring more of yourself, because that's what you were hired for. You're hired for not only your expertise, but also for the way you engage with people, the way you interact with people. You know, most big companies, the people that buy from them because they have well-known CEOs, they have well-known executives. People buy from people. But with that Nicola Bulley detective situation, yeah, you don't tell me about misogyny in media, because I was misogynized in the media. Media itself has a huge problem in terms of diversity and inclusion. And I think that you could see from that actually society still has a lot of stuff to get over itself in terms of diversity and inclusion and women in leadership.
It's very true, isn't it? Whenever you read an article on Theresa May when she was Prime Minister, it would always mention her shoes, almost always. Yeah. And you never hear anything about, you know, Boris Johnson's shoes or whatever. So, I mean, I'm sure you've got lots to say on that, but it does. I was interested to ask you, what does this affect men as well? I mean, or are they just immune because they all just wear a very uniform, generally? Obviously, I'm really generalizing there, but how does this affect men, the interaction between clothes and confidence and performance?
I actually think sometimes it can be harder for men because, for example, if they step outside of the lines of what is considered, you know, normal, then they can get kind of jokes made about them. Oh, look at so and so in his ridiculous trousers, when they're just trying to do something new. And what's interesting, the difference between men and women's wardrobes, is that men tend to spend more on clothes. They actually spend more on the pieces. So a man will go shopping and he won't have a problem with spending, you know, X amount on a new blazer, a new shirt and that stuff. But a woman will talk herself out of spending that much money, and then she'll tend to buy cheaper stuff, but overall she spends more because she's buying the cheaper stuff. So men spend more on the actual items, whereas women spend more overall. But for men, I think it can be really difficult to be yourself in an environment where you are told that this is how men dress. But then now with the new hybrid way of working, I have a lot of conversations with men where they aren't clear about what the guidance what the guidance is, there is no guidance. It's just be smart casual. Does that mean I can wear jeans? Does that mean I have to wear a blazer? Does that mean I have to wear a tie? Does that mean I have to wear a shirt? What am I supposed to be wearing to work? Someone please
It's really
explain.
interesting, isn't it? Because I suppose I always advocate that we shouldn't be too parental about these type of policies. You know, we shouldn't be telling people what to wear to work. But it is interesting that you're saying actually there's almost like a confusion, and I can really see that. And I know I've heard anecdotally graduates, you know, I don't know whether I think they do probably fall in that Gen Z. You know, they're arriving in the workplace in a like post-COVID world, not having had those kind of norms set by, you know, the past, and it is really challenging. And so I suppose it is trying to fit your, when you're doing your inductions or your interviews or whatever, trying to kind of set that guidance with the relevant people, you know, that who probably might need that guidance. Yeah, it is really interesting. What, I mean, we're coming towards the time where I was going to kind of stop and then allow people to ask you questions, but is there kind of one tip that you would give people before we do that, or a takeaway that you want people to think about?
Ooh, there's loads. What should I pick? I think it's really important to dress, and I know this is a really old saying, but dress for the job that you want. And what that means in practical terms is going back to the idea of enclosed cognition, is thinking about who you want to be and what they would wear. So if you imagine yourself in a couple of years from now and you are in a new leadership position, or you have made a certain amount of money in your business, you've hit some sort of goal that you're striving for, what is that person wearing? And if you look down and realize that that's nothing like what you're wearing right now, there's a problem here that needs fixing. So it's about adding in the identity of who you want to be into what you're wearing today. And that's where wearing stuff that makes you feel good every day is important, because what I find with a lot of clients who will they'll book in because there's been a trigger event, and the trigger event is that they have to go to a conference and do a speech and they feel like rubbish. And so the way to get around that is every day start building in little things that make you feel good. So putting on your perfume, or putting on accessories, or just wearing something that makes you feel a bit nicer than normal, so that by the time you get to that event, putting on the suit doesn't feel like you're putting on someone else's identity, because you've already done those things every day, and it's just like another day. It's just another day to you because you already feel good.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that is fantastic advice. I am going to open to everyone else now.